Hello and welcome to Nirmal Bang, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. We have with us Sunil Kumar Sinha, Principal Economist at India Ratings and Research, joining in. Sunil, welcome to the show and always a pleasure to speak to you. Sunil, let's start from the inflation side of it. We just recently had the CPI inflation data that came in at 6.3%. Now, clearly, the CPI does remain above the RBI's target of 6%. However, do you think it will be largely looked through unless inflation persists over 6% for an extended period of time?
Um, the concerns that has been expressed with respect to inflation are fairly legitimate because it is higher than the target level of RBI, which is 6%. And above 6% is what we have seen consecutively for 2 months now.
Hmm.
So certainly there is a concern that if inflation remains at this level, or this, then what kind of a response RBI will have with respect to the monetary policy. And I guess some of the communication still suggests that RBI believes that this is more of a transitory phenomena than a permanent feature. And one of the way to look at it could be that look at the rate of inflation or the retail inflation of last year. From April through till about October, November, the inflation was at elevated level, more than 6%.
Correct.
So clearly the base is high. So one way to look at this whole issue is that with such a high base, it is unlikely that YOY month after month will be in excess of 6%. But at the same time, we should also look at the inflation forecast or the guidance which RBI has given for the entire fiscal year 22, which is about 5.2%. So clearly, what we are going to witness over the next, couple of months is that somewhat elevated inflation, but it may or may not remain beyond 6%. And due to the base effect, and if monsoon progresses well and inflationary expectations remain anchored, then to a large extent we believe that inflation may slip back into the tolerance zone of RBI. But certainly it is not going to be in and around 4%. It will more closer to 5.5%. Our own forecast for fiscal year 22, average retail inflation for fiscal year 22 is 5.5%.
Right. So with all of this, do you think that RBI will remain vigilant, number one, on inflation? And even if they remain vigilant, do you expect them to retain its growth supportive stance at least through calendar year 21?
Yes, I mean, that is our understanding that even though inflation is currently beyond the tolerance zone of RBI, but I guess given the growth inflation dynamics and the way things are panning out, I mean, especially the high frequency data that we are looking at now for the month of April and May is clearly suggesting that COVID 2.0 related lockdowns have impacted the economy. But there are also indications that as the lockdown started getting lifted from the first week of June, there is some kind of a bounce back. I mean, has also been witnessed. But again, I mean, this bounce back that we witnessed from the first week of June, is it sustainable, not sustainable? Or is it more of a pent-up demand which may sustain just for maybe a few weeks and then it'll get back to the normal? We really don't know. But the question is that yes, there are significant impact on the overall growth process. The way the IIP data is showing, my own view is that RBI will remain supportive to the growth. So if it has to remain supportive for the growth, which simply means that it is unlikely that RBI will either change its accommodative stance or will raise the policy rate. So on both the front, we can see the status quo at least till the end of the calendar year 21.
Right. And in case we see a increase in rates happening, what's the kind of timelines you think we should be looking at?
As I said, Hiral, that the inflation, which currently is hovering above 6%, is unlikely to remain there, mainly because of base effect, and also if monsoon progresses well, and inflationary, expectations remain anchored. Clearly, we will see it falling below 6%. So in that case, I guess RBI's overall stance would be to support growth, and if support has to be given to the growth, then it's unlikely that we will see RBI changing either its tone, tenor, or the stance anytime soon. So my own sense is that if at all there is any indication that RBI wants to, or any signal RBI wants to give to the market on the policy front, then it will be more into the say October to December quarter. Before that, it is unlikely that RBI will send any signal contrary to its current position.
Right. And overall, with regards to growth as well, Sunil, what's your anticipation in terms of FY22? Because we've seen a revision that's already come through by the RBI itself.
We ourselves have revised our own GDP growth forecast. I mean, our last forecast was 10.1% GDP growth in the fiscal year 22, which we had published around middle of April. But the way the COVID 2.0 panned out and the way the economic activity have been impacted, we believe that growth will not remain around that level. So we have brought it down to 9.6%. But that is also conditional because in the sense that we believe that if the entire population of 18 plus gets vaccinated by December end, then this 9.6% growth forecast would hold. In case we fail to do that, then the chances are that the GDP growth for fiscal year 22 will fall further down to 9.1%.
Right. And with this growth forecast, how important is rural growth going to be? Because clearly in the first wave, rural growth was resilient. Second wave, you have good portion of rural India that has been impacted on the back of COVID, right? And we did pay a lot of attention that, yes, rural India, the growth from that part of the society is something which will help us survive. Do you think that's something which will slow down in FY22, which will pose a concern?
So far as rural demand is concerned, obviously the rural demand, after COVID 2.0 is unlikely to be similar to what we had witnessed after COVID 1.0, because COVID 1.0 was largely an urban phenomenon. It did not impact the rural economy, either agriculture or non-agricultural activity. But when we look at the impact of COVID 2.0, then it is obvious that this time around the COVID has impacted the rural population also. My own view is that to a large extent, if monsoon remains as the IMD has predicted, then the agricultural activity are unlikely to be impacted. I mean, because agricultural activity are more intense either in the beginning or towards the end, when the sowing is done and then the harvesting is done. So that part is largely monsoon dependent. And my own guess is that if monsoon progresses well, I don't see why there should be any problem with respect to sowing, and then in turn the overall agricultural output. However, what is of a concern is that with the spread of COVID-19 in the rural areas, it is the non-agricultural activity which will get significantly impacted, because most of the non-agricultural activity in the rural areas are contact intensive. I mean, whether you look at the construction activity, or whether you look at these petty small activity relating to retail shops, relating to say repair shops, and so on and so forth, and even to the extent that even the activities which are generally supported by MNREGS, even they are contact intensive in nature. So COVID 2.0 impacting rural areas means that those activities will slow down, and that will have impact on the non-agricultural income. And there are several sectors, where if the bread earner of a family say is out of action for one or the other reason, that simply means that the rural spending of that household will suddenly dip. So if you take all of these into account, then we clearly see that rural consumption is unlikely to be of the same level as we had seen last year. So certainly that's a big concern.
Okay. And with all of this, do you think the government will have to increase their allocations, especially with regards to where the Manrega schemes go? Or for that matter, if you talk about supporting MSMEs, supporting the people below poverty line, is that something that will have to be considered according to you?
I think that's absolutely critical if we really want the growth to revive, because whether you look at COVID 1.0 or 2.0, and the way things have unfolded, it is increasingly becoming obvious that the big businesses or the large businesses have been fairly resilient, in the sense that not only they have the wherewithal to sustain and survive the pandemic and pandemic related lockdowns, but also the fact that they are far more resilient because they have also taken advantage of the digital platform. So some amount of business continuity they have been able to maintain. The ones who have really been impacted are the MSME and the informal sector, where any kind of a lockdown completely shuts their business, and in a way their livelihood, their earning, and so on and so forth. So they are at the receiving end. So any policy and also most of the supply side measures, or most of the policy measures that were announced, I mean, apart from the income transfer or food grain, are something of which the larger corporates have taken advantage of. I mean, look at the TLTRO scheme. Most of the benefits were cornered by the large corporates. It is the medium and small enterprises which really could not benefit the way they should have. And similarly, the people who are at the bottom of the pyramid, they are the ones who immediately get impacted in case of a lockdown. So if we really are looking to revive economy, then these are the segments which really need hand-holding of the government. And it is here that focus has to be. Some of the schemes are targeted towards them as well. I mean, in the announcement which FM made last month, some of the schemes are targeted towards them. So they have increased the credit lending scheme for MSME. They have also increased the corpus and so on and so forth. But to what an extent it is really reaching them is the crucial issue. And also the free food grains that we are providing to the people at the bottom of pyramid, that also should not be a kind of a reaction to the situation, in the sense that last year the announcement was made and the scheme continued till November, and then it got discontinued. After COVID 2.0, again the need was felt, so again it has been extended to them. But that's not really going to alleviate their problem. I guess the issue is that till the time we really have a fair success with the vaccination, and we are in a position to really say that at least we have reached a level where herd immunity has been attained. I don't think that this kind of a support should be withdrawn. And otherwise, what happens is that it further creates a kind of a uncertainty in the minds of these people that, okay, today I'm getting, tomorrow I may not get, then what do I do? So if you really want these sections of society or MSME to really feel assured that in times of distress, government is there to help out, there has to be a continuity of these schemes, not only for a few months, but maybe, at least till the time, we attain the herd.
Right. So, Sunil, with all of this, how do you think will the government be able to achieve the fiscal deficit that has been laid out so far? And do we see concerns on that end?
You see, fiscal deficit obviously has two components. One component, of course, relates to the expenditure, which obviously with COVID 2.0 may actually go up. But the other side of the story is that what kind of a revenue which government can actually mobilize, and whatever is the gap is what government will have to borrow from the market. The good thing here is that the GST collection, although it has dipped in the mostly recent month, which is the May and April, as compared to October, November onwards till about March, where it was in excess of 1 lakh crores of rupees. I think one way to look at the whole issue is that, in this whole pandemic, what has happened is that there has been a greater formalization of Indian economy. Means a large part of the space which has been vacated by the SME or unorganized sector has actually been captured by the organized sector. So if you look at the balance sheet of large corporates, they are showing good profits. And in fact, that is what is getting reflected in stock exchanges, so in a way, if organized sector's footprint is increasing at the cost of MSME or informal sector, then simultaneously two things are happening. From the tax perspective, it is good because government will be garnering more resources, and to that extent, it will help the central government, or for that matter, state government, in their revenue generation. But at the same time, I mean, shrinkage of informal sector or MSME also means that the number of jobs that gets created and the number of livelihoods which these sectors support will keep going down. So on the one hand, government will have more resources with the larger footprint of organized sector, which will help them to contain the fiscal deficit at whatever level it has been budgeted. But at the same time, it will also put pressure on the government to create more fiscal transfers to the vulnerable sections. So it's a tough balancing act for the government. That even though revenue may reach to the level which you have budgeted, but at the same time, expenditure may go beyond the level which you have budgeted. So how do you really balance it and come up with schemes and come up with ideas which can get you a larger bang for the buck?
So with all of this, taking into consideration how inflation is going to pan out, how the vaccinations pan out, additionally, how big a risk do you think is the US Federal Reserve's stance for an emerging market like India? Because currently, if you go to see, you are seeing FIs which are moving out. You are seeing good sales numbers, at least in terms of where the equities go. So do you think that's something which could impact us?
Global issues have obviously impacted the Indian economy, more so the financial markets, because financial markets are far more integrated with the global financial market as compared to the overall, the real economy, so to say. So with Fed raising rate of interest, certainly some of the capital which was flowing into the emerging markets may not flow, and some of the capital which has already flown to the emerging market may actually start leaving the emerging market. So this phenomena will certainly unfold, and we have seen in the past how things really pan out. But the good thing here is that through the pandemic and overall, the stance which RBI has followed in the forex market with respect to managing the exchange rate is that it has always or it has intervened in the forex market in a way that it has mopped up more dollar than it has released the dollar. Depending upon which way the rupee is moving. And the net result is that our forex reserves are now in excess of 600 billion. So that should certainly, provide a lot of cushion to the Indian economy, if at all we get into a situation like taper tantrum or something like that. So I don't think that even an abrupt movement of or abrupt announcement in the global market will really rupture or disturb the Indian domestic financial market. I mean, we have a fair amount of firepower to kind of contain that, but at the same time, we should also note that RBI has intervened in the market in a way to stop appreciation of rupee. But RBI has not intervened in the market with the same vigor if the rupee is depreciating. So there will be a bias in rupee to depreciate if such a situation arises, despite RBI's intervention.
Okay. And with all of this, do you think clearly with regards to where the rupee and the bond markets go, how big an impact are we expected to see? What's the kind of movement that you're anticipating?
So far as bond market is concerned, Hiral, I guess in the last 2-3 months, we have seen the yield kind of moving up. It was close to 6% or a little less than 6%, but since then the 10-year GSEC rate has moved up, and now it is around 6.1, 6.12%. Given the fact that retail inflation is again beyond the comfort zone of RBI, and as we were kind of discussing a little while ago, that if it remains around that level, then certainly, given the kind of borrowing which government intends to do, both the center plus state, and who knows, I mean, COVID 2.0 impact, if is not really gets overcome in the remaining 10 months of the current fiscal, means there will be an additional pressure on both the central and state government to fund their deficit. So all of that, if you take into account, then certainly the rates are unlikely to soften back to 6%. It will remain somewhat elevated and may actually even move further to 6.2, 6.3% is our call. Clearly, the cost of borrowing is going to go up. And we have that is one piece of issue. The other issue is that since there is a fair amount of uncertainty in the market, and there is a talk of COVID 3.0 also lurking on the horizon. The risk aversion in the financial market will be significant. So what has been observed in the last 1.5 year is that the amount of policy rate cut which RBI has done, the entire rate cut has not been passed on to the borrowers, either by the banks or the capital market. And that's why the spread between the policy rate and the GSET, which was about 110 basis points before the COVID-related lockdown started, actually increased to in the band of 150 to 200 basis point, and even now it is close to 200 basis point. And the same thing is getting reflected even in the corporate bond market, where the corporates at the longer end, I mean, if they have to borrow at 5-year, 10-year tenure, then the spread between policy rate and the rate which they have to pay for borrowing is again in excess of 250 basis point. It is only at the shorter end, I mean, 6 months, 1 year is where the advantage has been passed on to the corporates, and we have seen fair amount of activity happening there. That a number of large corporates have borrowed significantly through CPs and the short-term papers.
Right. And your view on the credit side of it, because clearly if you see credit growth, we are still in that below 6% kind of a bracket. However, that's something which needs to pick up as well from here on to see the economy grow. Do you think credit growth at 6% will continue to remain a concern? And with bank credit as well, what's happened is there are asset quality concerns what people were talking about. What's the sense on credit growth along with the asset quality for banks?
Well, last year when the COVID-related lockdown and thereafter, the moratorium which RBI had announced, and even the loan restructuring, that obviously provided a lot of breather to the banking sector. Otherwise, a number of, I mean, in a way, the credit quality would have further deteriorated, whatever we had been witnessing before the COVID-related lockdown. But it is just because of the moratorium, the restructuring, etc., helped the banks not to book many of their, credits under the NPA category. Now, as we emerge out of the COVID 2.0, we clearly see that such moratorium hasn't been announced by the RBI. And although there are schemes, whereby credit guarantee, etc., has been extended by the government, but at the same time, we also are going to see that many of the restructured loans, if the economy does not pick up, then will again start, tottering, and many of them may actually end up again becoming NPAs. On the other hand, a lot of entities who had enjoyed the moratorium, and now they are no longer enjoying the moratorium, but at the same time, since economic activity hasn't gone back to the level which will at least create enough EBITDA margins for them to kind of support the credit servicing, we also find it difficult. So net, the scenario that is emerging is twofold. On the one hand, we may witness a fair amount of deterioration in the credit quality in the banking system, and on the other hand, because of such a situation and economic activity not picking up, the banks will continue to be risk averse. I mean, even though they have the money, but they will still go very safe and will only lend to the corporates who are highly rated, and the ones who really need money and are not highly rated will still struggle for credit.
Right.
So it's a peculiar situation that the ones who need it will not get it, and the ones who don't need it, probably banks will try to chase them.
Right. And very lastly, Sunil, do you think that it could be imminent risk of slippages in the retail and the MSME portfolio, especially? And secondly, to it, you have the private corporate sector bank credit, which has declined for a second consecutive year. So, how do we see this scenario panning out?
One of the things which banks have done is that as the corporate borrowing has come down significantly, and because of their own risk aversion, they are not lending as much to MSME sector as well. So one of the growth areas for most of the banks has been the what is called retail lending, and that portfolio, whether in most of the cases, these are non-secured, but as we know that this is, despite that, this is an area where the delinquencies or NPAs are still very low. Maybe because of the nature of Indian households, that they typically don't borrow. And in case they borrow, then, whatever opportunity they get, they try to repay it. So this kind of a discipline or mentality has helped the banks to see that by and large, the retail portfolios have done fairly well. Not to say that defaults haven't happened, but certainly. So what may happen is that because of the stress that is building, where maybe job losses are there, maybe salary cuts are there, so some amount of delinquencies or non-payment may arise even the retail portfolio. But I guess it will not be a case where non-payment will be a kind of a deliberate or willful default, so to say. It will be more driven by the circumstances. So if the banks look at these retail portfolio case by case basis and try to adjust the portfolio according to the circumstances, then I still believe that this portfolio will remain an area of growth for the banking sector. MSME is difficult simply because if they are not able to revive their businesses, then it is going to be very, very difficult to imagine how these portfolios can be turned around.
Right, absolutely. And that's something we will have to watch out for as well. Thank you, Sunil, so much for joining us on the show. Always a pleasure to speak to you and get insights. Thank you. Stay safe and speak to you soon again.
Yeah, thank you, Viral. Thank you for getting me here. Thanks a lot.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.